Voice referendum is fast approaching. However, it appears to be struggling in the polls. According to recent polls, support has significantly declined. According to Redbridge, 56% of Australians intend to vote no. This rises to 59% if people are first fully informed about both the yes and the no campaign arguments. Only 41% of fully informed people intend to vote yes. The more people know about The Voice, the less people like it. Even the Guardian Essential poll, which has traditionally favoured the yes campaign, now shows that no is ahead. Now, there could be multiple reasons for support falling. However, one of them could be that The Voice appears to be a massive cash grab. And this has emerged due to what is in the Uluru Statement. Now, this is not a mere conspiracy theory. It is not mere speculation. It is inherent in what the Uluru Statement actually says. The Uluru Statement to which Anthony Albanese has committed in full. Now, Anthony Albanese has tried to claim that the Uluru Statement is in fact just one A4 page. However, that A4 page is just a summary. The full Uluru Statement to the Heart, which I will link to in the description below, is a full 26 or so pages. It goes through a lot of detail and a lot of demands, with The Voice being one of them, and The Voice being the mechanism through which they intend to achieve the other demands. This is part of an extended, full Uluru Statement, something that I will remind you Anthony Albanese has committed to in full. Now, there has been some back and forth about whether the full Uluru Statement is that 26-page document or whether the full Uluru Statement is simply the one-page summary that is in public circulation. However, that doesn't actually really matter, because even if the full Uluru Statement is simply one page, that one page is actually very, very broad, and the terms within it require definition. For example, that one-page document makes reference to Makarrata, which refers to a treaty. However, it doesn't define what that treaty is or what the goals behind the treaty are. We need additional documents in order to define what a Makarrata would be intended to achieve. And those additional documents are clearly that 26-page document. In a 26-page document, it goes through the goals for Makarrata, which include compensation, which it seems would take the form of a proportion of GDP. This means that Anthony Albanese appears to be committing in full to what is within that Uluru Statement. And this includes treaty, and it includes quote-unquote reparations, which would involve a financial payment. So let's look at a couple of quotes here. In relation to The Voice, the Uluru Statement says, "Any voice to Parliament should be designed so that it could support and promote a treaty-making process." Now, the question, of course, is then, what exactly is treaty? Well, the Uluru Statement has an answer for what they intend there as well. They state, treaty could include a proper say in decision-making, the establishment of a truth commission, reparations, a financial settlement, such as seeking a percentage of GDP, the resolution of land, water and resources issues, recognition of authority and customary law, and guarantees of respect for the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now, within that, we can easily see that a financial settlement is the intention behind treaty. The goal there is to get money. The goal there is to get so-called reparations. It is clear, therefore, this would be a cash grab. It is clear that the goal is to achieve voice, which will push for a treaty, which will push for reparations, which would seemingly involve a percentage of GDP. So what does this mean for everyday Australians? Well, it clearly means tax hikes and/or worse government services. If a percentage of GDP is now going to be tithed, well, the government will have less money to spend on its existing essential services. And this means that either those services are going to suffer, or taxes will need to increase to offset that, or more likely, both are going to occur. Everyday Australians, therefore, would lose out from this financial settlement. It's clear, therefore, that when Australians find out about this, they're obviously a little bit concerned. They're concerned about why exactly it is that their taxes could go up as a result of The Voice. They're concerned about this, particularly when the cost of living crisis is really starting to bite. Now, Anthony Albanese can't keep sidestepping these issues. He can't keep pretending these are conspiracy theories. Indeed, his own comments about the Uluru Statement, i.e. pretending that it's just one A4 page, are misinformation. Anthony Albanese himself is peddling a conspiracy theory that the Uluru Statement is simply one page of platitudes. Rather, it is a 26-page long demand for payment. The Voice is how that payment is to be achieved. This could extend past mere advocacy. It could easily extend to The Voice being a mechanism to stymie government operations, potentially through frivolous litigation, if the government were to balk at their demands. Now, Anthony Albanese, interestingly enough, is the one peddling misinformation, the one promoting a conspiracy theory. This is very ironic, given that the current government is the one trying to stamp out misinformation through their rather draconian laws in relation to such. The current government, while peddling misinformation itself, is trying to stamp out other people disagreeing with it. Notably, in the government's own approach to stamp out misinformation, it excludes and exempts itself from those regulations. i.e., the government is trying to give itself carte blanche to go out and promote misinformation itself, while denying everyone else the right to question its own misinformation. Now, some might argue the government might refuse to pay these demands for reparations. However, so far Anthony Albanese has caved on all issues related to The Voice. It was suggested, for example, that The Voice have its powers slightly toned back. Maybe that The Voice would not be able to interfere with the executive government. However, he decided to push ahead anyway. He decided to push ahead because that was the recommendation of The Voice Steering Committee. Anthony Albanese, when he had the chance, did not push back. It's not clear he would push back in the future. Further, The Voice can have very real power. It can interfere with all branches of the executive government. The Voice could, for example, launch frivolous litigation if it doesn't get its way on other issues. This frivolous litigation could slow down government and could be incredibly costly. Now, one could argue this litigation is to be doomed. It's frivolous. Why would anyone care? Well, the reason one would care is individual line workers at the government, individual bureaucrats. They don't want to deal with the stress of litigation. They would rather just cave to The Voice than have to go to court, to have to deal with all of that acrimony. They're clearly going to just cave to what The Voice wants, and The Voice would know this. So, for example, it would be known to the government that if the government were to resist what The Voice wants, The Voice might litigate, impose that stress on individual workers, and therefore they would just cave. And given that The Voice is backed by substantial taxpayer resources, it effectively has unlimited funds, there is no deterrent against that interference. It potentially could be a litigant with almost bottomless pits of money. And there appears to be no deterrent against such interference. What's to stop it? It clearly would be able to go out and do all of this litigation. It could clearly go out and slow government down. And this is clearly a problem, because if the government were to balk at demands for financial payments, for example, well, The Voice would then be able to credibly indicate that it could act in a more hostile manner toward the government, a more aggressive, a more antagonistic manner toward the government in other ways, making government's life much slower and or much more expensive. Now, with this in mind, one wonders, why is it that people would want to vote yes and risk something potentially so costly? And the government has given no safeguards against this. Anthony Albanese keeps sidestepping the question. If we look at the actual referendum text, well, the constitutional amendment itself has no safeguards against this. There is no protection against this type of financial settlement. There is no protection against those demands. So it would appear the best way to sidestep any demands for such quote-unquote reparations, any demands for financial payments, any demands for a tithing on GDP would simply be to vote no. And for this reason, many Australians appear to be turning against The Voice, and hence why the Yes campaign is in real trouble. And the government's own rhetoric, the government's own inability and refusal to completely disclaim compensation, and the inability and refusal to have put that in as a safeguard into the constitutional amendment is a very bad sign. And Australians aren't stupid. Australians can see this as a real risk, and hence why they are turning against The Voice.